April 2nd, 1982. In the cold waters of the South Atlantic, an isolated cluster of islands erupts into global headlines. A surprise invasion, secret missions, and a clash of military powers were about to unfold in one of the most unlikely wars of the 20th century. What pushed two nations, separated by thousands of miles, into a bloody conflict over this windswept archipelago? And what secret alliances and covert operations turned the tide of this war? Stick with us as we unravel the gripping story of the Falklands War, right down to its shocking conclusion and its lasting legacy today. The seeds of the Falklands War were planted long before the first shot was fired. Known as the Malvinas in Argentina, these remote islands had been a point of contention since 1833, when Britain took control, forcing out the small Argentine settlement. For nearly 150 years, the islands were sparsely populated, home to just a few thousand British citizens and a vital symbol of sovereignty for both nations. But by the late 20th century, tensions flared. Argentina, under the rule of a brutal military junta, was grappling with economic turmoil and domestic unrest. The generals believed that retaking the Malvinas would reignite national pride and distract the public from their struggles. Meanwhile, in Britain, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher faced her own political challenges, with her government under fire for rising unemployment and economic decline. Both leaders would gamble everything on this conflict. In the early hours of April 2nd, Argentine forces launched Operation Rosario, swiftly overwhelming the small British garrison on the Falklands. The operation was almost bloodless, with just one British Royal Marine and several Argentine soldiers wounded. Argentina's public rejoiced, believing they had finally reclaimed their long-lost territory. But halfway across the world, Britain's response was swift and decisive. Margaret Thatcher declared the invasion an act of aggression and mobilized a naval task force of over 100 ships, one of the largest deployments since World War II. The message was clear: Britain would not give up the Falklands without a fight. While the British task force steamed south, a shadow war was already unfolding. Both sides employed special forces in daring missions to outmaneuver their opponents. Operation Parakeet British Special Air Service troops launched a daring raid on the island of South Georgia, retaking it just weeks after the invasion. It was a psychological blow to Argentina and a signal of Britain's intent to reclaim every inch of its territory. Argentina's espionage attempts, Argentine operatives sought to gather intelligence on the British fleet, even attempting to infiltrate neutral South American nations to gain an advantage. But perhaps the most critical factor lay in the hands of external players. The United States, officially neutral, secretly leaned toward Britain. American satellites provided critical intelligence on Argentine troop movements, and Washington even supplied the British with vital military hardware like Sidewinder missiles. Meanwhile, Argentina turned to its ally, Peru, for arms and diplomatic support, and covertly received weapons from Libya. By May, the conflict reached its bloody crescendo. The Falklands War would be fought in three domains: air, sea and land, each with its share of dramatic confrontations and heavy losses. The air war, Argentina's Air Force launched relentless attacks on British ships. On May 4th, the Exocet missile struck its first victim, the HMS Sheffield, marking one of Britain's most devastating losses. But British Harrier jets, equipped with advanced Sidewinder missiles, dominated the skies, outmaneuvering Argentine pilots in dogfights. The Sea War. The waters around the Falklands became a graveyard for ships. Argentina's General Belgrano was sunk by a British submarine, the HMS Conqueror, killing over 300 sailors. It was a controversial move, as the ship was outside the declared exclusion zone at the time of its sinking. The Land War. As British troops landed on the Falklands, fierce battles erupted across the rugged terrain. The Battle of Goose Green, led by Colonel H. Jones, saw the British achieve a pivotal victory, but at a heavy cost, including Jones himself. In the dead of winter, soldiers endured freezing temperatures and relentless artillery barrages. As soldiers fought on the front lines, political maneuvering continued behind closed doors. The United Nations called for a ceasefire, and Pope John Paul II visited both nations in a desperate bid to broker peace. But neither side would back down. For Argentina's junta, surrender was unthinkable. It would spell the end of their regime. For Thatcher, a defeat would have destroyed her government. By mid-June, British forces had the upper hand. After a series of grueling battles, they closed in on the capital, Port Stanley. On June 14th, Argentine forces surrendered, ending the 74-day war. Britain had reclaimed the islands, but at a high price. The cost of war. Over 900 lives were lost, 649 Argentines, 255 British soldiers and 3 civilians. The financial toll was staggering, with both nations spending billions. The Falklands War reshaped both nations. In Britain, Margaret Thatcher emerged as a triumphant leader, securing a landslide re-election in 1983. The war also revitalized British military pride and cemented its status as a global power. In Argentina, the defeat shattered the junta's grip on power. By 1983, the dictatorship had collapsed, paving the way for democratic elections. However, the war left deep scars. To this day, the Malvinas remain a symbol of national identity, with Argentina still claiming sovereignty. The secret that could have changed it all: here's something most people don't know. Argentina came perilously close to acquiring nuclear weapons during the war. Declassified documents suggest that had the conflict dragged on, the junta might have used this as a last resort. The war could have escalated into an unimaginable disaster. The Falklands War may have lasted just 74 days, but its legacy continues to ripple across history. It's a story of political gambles, military courage, and human cost. The islands themselves remain a haunting reminder of what happens when diplomacy fails. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history and want to explore more gripping stories from the past, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon to never miss another video. This has been Quickfire Fact. See you next time.